podcast. This is your King of the Knife, it's Valentine, me ex-Turk, and I'm here I'm actually the lawyer that's going to defend the case of good and bad games, pretty much defend Dirgeofcerberus, and why it's actually not as bad as people think it is. Now, granted, the game mechanics have changed, and most people who play the original Final Fantasy VII or any original Final Fantasy titles with the turn-based isn't going to like the game, considering the game mechanics have changed, which makes sense if you ask me, first of all, because, Vincent Valentine has a different kind of, Vincent Valentine actually has a different kind of, has a different kind of gameplay than the other characters, and when they do the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm pretty sure Vincent Valentine's going to get his Dirgeofcerberus moveset, where he can switch his guns, switch to limit break, switch to magic. Just because Vincent Valentine with Final Fantasy gunning characters, sure, turn-based is, exactly what it's supposed to be, and stuff like that. But it's like with Final Fantasy gunner characters, it'd be more realistic to actually have them use things in their arsenal, because that's what they're used for, just like with magic-based characters and stuff like that, etc. So, the game mechanics, in my opinion, are fine from what I know. It does feel odd, but you gotta remember, too, that this game's also a spin-off, too. And spin-offs never follow the stereotype of the original predecessor. Final Fantasy 13 2 never followed what Final Fantasy 13 did. Final Fantasy 10 2 never followed the game mechanics of Final Fantasy 10, the very first 10. Point case saying that it's a spin-off game, so it's not really supposed to follow everything, while also staying to the source material, and it has stayed to the source material. It has stayed to continuity. Now, besides the Lucretia argument, which I'm not going to get below, if you want to know about that video, just go to the video before this one. It's down below that one if you want to know. But, I personally go with Lucretia because of Final Fantasy VII. But besides the name change, it did stay close to continuity. Sephiroth is born by Lucretia or Lucretia, depending on, what you call her. Shinra had a hidden army that was kept away from the world because how dangerous this army was, known as the Deep Ground Army. And one of their first class soldiers is one, original first class soldier was one of the ones who actually became the leader of this army. And if you play Crisis Core, you'll know who I'm talking about, the brothers, Weiss and Nero. So it does fit in the continuity from the compilation as well as the original as well. So we know that Shinra actually had a hidden army that was stuck below until Meteor hit. So it does stay to continuity. Plus, Hojo talked about the reunion when he possessed when Hojo possessed Weiss. When Hojo possessed Weiss, he talked about the reunion in Sephiroth, thus advertising the original game. So maybe this game, after all, isn't really bad because it did what it was trying to do. It was trying to advertise and make you play the original by putting some cameos and properties from the original to the original, so it made you play the original game. So it was doing what it was supposed to do, and granted, remember, when the compilation of Final Fantasy VII came out, they couldn't make the remake, so that's why they made a compilation instead, hoping you guys would be happy. But then we got the Final Fantasy elitists that just, gets mad when something's not the same. And let's be honest, Final Fantasy is an ever-changing game. It's not always turn-based. Look at Final Fantasy 15 so far. People weren't ready for Final Fantasy 15, so they gave Final Fantasy 15 low scores. Now, granted, Final Fantasy 15 did kind of push microtransactions with the story. Nobody really likes those. I could defend the fan base when it comes to that kind of stuff. But when it comes to gameplay mechanics, it's always ever changing. It's through each different era. I think turn-based kind of actually stopped. I think turn-based kind of stopped after 10, when because they changed the system and they made it into kind of actiony, because of Final Fantasy 12. But Dirgeofcerberus was Vincent Valentine's game, which Cloud passed down the torch to Vincent Valentine, and that's why he's the main character. So you gotta make the gameplay tailored to his style of combat and stuff like that. And it's not like it didn't work really well. There are some of the properties of that gameplay that made to other games too, like Episode Prompto and so on and so on. But you know, if you're gonna have a Final Fantasy game based off of gun combat, then you're gonna have to have a game based on gun combat. You know, customizing guns. Now Dirge of Cerberus did keep some of these RPG elements. Like you had to level up your characters in order to have a higher survive factor in that game. You couldn't just keep them at level 5 through the whole game. You had to actually either choose the guild or choose to get the experience. Now, I've always, no matter how many times I play, I've always got enough guild where I could actually do that because I played the game properly. So, you know, I've always put into my experience points, so my survival rates were, you know, high. And then, you know, I've always put money into in the game to upgrade my guns and stuff like that. So I play it right. You know, I play the game completely right. Plus, if you really think about this could be a precursor to what the Final Fantasy VII Remake have when Vincent Valentine does make it on there. Because each of their characters are having their own gameplay. You see, when Cloud switched to Barret, Barret has a different kind of gameplay set just to make it look like you're actually playing the characters. And the problem with, look, turn-based was good back in the 90s, but I'd rather have this personalization thing. That way I feel like I'm actually playing the characters. Now, it does not mean it's going to negate the RPG factors. Remember, Dirge of Cerberus still had RPG factors because you had to have a strong survival rate by putting your XP to his level. And then upgrade your guns from time to time. And then use the rest of the money to buy potions and stuff like that. You still had to buy potions, high potions and stuff like that. And not like the Final Fantasy VII PC edition, there were no God Money Mode in Dirge of Cerberus. There was no God Money Mode in Dirge of Cerberus. You either just make your survival rate high by spending those cast points to EXP or money. But it's best most people do money, and that's why they failed. So it's not really, now I granted there is drawbacks. The game was kind of easier than any Final Fantasy game. But remember, Final Fantasy is an ever-changing game. And this is a spin-off title. And the spin-off title really isn't supposed to follow the stereotype. Matter of fact, the spin-offs are supposed to advertise the original game. If you really think about it, you think 10-2 was, sure it had its own story. But did you realize that the fire plan and all those concepts are explained in the original Final Fantasy X? Yes, because that's exactly what it was made for. That's exactly what it was tailored to. Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus, just like Crisis Core, just like the Advent Children movie, are supposed to do one thing, and that's supposed to make you buy the original Final Fantasy VII. There are extended commercials, if you really think about it. Extended game commercials to buy Final Fantasy VII to make you actually like the world of Final Fantasy VII. There are extended commercials. They are there to make you purchase the original. They're here trying to make you purchase the original copy so you could actually understand all the concepts that are there before. Because remember, Dirge of Cerberus is a sequel to Advent Children, and Advent Children is a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. So you're not going to understand the movie Advent Children, and you're not going to understand Dirge of Cerberus without playing the original. You have to play the original. You probably won't even understand Crisis Core, even though in order you should play Crisis Core first, then Final Fantasy VII. But the point is it's the concepts. The concepts were following the continuity. Even with the new villains like the Deep Ground Army did follow the original continuity because they were Shinra's underground army that stayed there until the meteor hit. And the concepts like the reunion, Genova cells, the Mako energy, it stayed in the game, so you can't really complain about the continuity. Sure, it had a little bit more Vincent Valentine, which, again, I will go back and say this is actually his game, so, going back to Lucretia and all that stuff, or Lucretia, it made sense. Plus, it showed the detailed birth of Sephiroth and the visions that Lucretia saw when she was giving birth to Sephiroth, so it actually put things back into the original game. So pretty much, it did its job as a spin-off, because spin-off games are supposed to advertise the original games. They're just commercial games to advertise the original games, to make you actually fall in love with the original games. Because, plus gaming was getting in its new time, and Square Enix, they're always going to try something new. Square Enix is always trying to try something new, so you gotta understand that's the whole concept and ideas to, you know, the whole idea is actually just to change gameplay, because they also want to use this gameplay in other things. Now, part of, the combat system from Dirge of Cerberus went to Dirge of Cerberus, a little bit of it at least. But what if Dirge of Cerberus was actually trying to show you how Vincent Valentine is going to actually play like in the remake? Because they have their own gameplay style. Sure, it's Kingdom Hearts based, but they have their own movesets, which makes personalization better. And it's good. And with the game based off one character, I think you have to have the gameplay tailored to that. And even then, they kind of wanted to try something new before actually implement it in their new games. So can you really blame Square Enix for that? Now, Square Enix have done a lot of bad things, but I think this is genius because this is where they could test their software, and then they can go back years later and say, you know what, Vince, how are we going to make Vincent Valentine's gameplay in the remake of Final Fantasy VII? Oh, remember that one compilation game that's no longer canon? We could just take the game mechanics, like the shooting mechanics, put it in this game. There we go. Not too hard, not too complicated. So it did what it's doing. It's actually a precursor to a little bit that's going to happen in a remake. With the graphical change and, Vincent Valentine's moveset in the game's going to be in the new remake. But it's also the fact that they're advertising the old games. They're telling you there's a message to you to play the old games. And the Dirge of Cerberus story wasn't that bad. Now, I'll admit they copied some things with Metal Gear, because Deep Ground looks like some Metal Gear villains. But they did it in a way where it's actually good. They've actually adapted another source material without even, telling you that they did it. It was actually genius. The storytelling was really good. Now, the only problem I had was like Vincent had to go visit his past that he finally let go in the original. But if you really think about it, he had to go back in his past to figure out what was going on. So he had to, do that, and so you gotta give him credit for that. You gotta give him credit for that. You really got you gotta give him you gotta give them credit for doing that, because yes, he has to go back and live his past to figure out the new villains and stuff like that. Considering his father has hand in the Deep Brown Army, and actually had some things to do with the Deep Ground Army, so it made sense you'd have to go back in the past. So, the storytelling is not really bad or anything like that. Sure, is the game a little edgy, but you really can't get mad at a Vincent Valentine game not being too edgy, because Vincent Valentine's character and his story is edgier and darker than Cloud's story. Vincent Valentine's pretty much a much darker version of Cloud, kind of like a Punisher-esque character. You couldn't have Vincent Valentine's story without it being dark. It's supposed to be dark. It's done what it's supposed to. Granted, I think that it was kind of foolish to put a T rating, but I understand why they do that. They do that to make sure even teenagers could play the game. But I still think it's kind of foolish if you ask me. But if you ask me, I think it's implemented perfectly. But it should have got M rated, because you can't really tell a Vincent Valentine's story that isn't dark. His story is way darker than Cloud's is, But I think, to be honest, the one flaw I could say about Dirge of Cerberus is I think Dirge of Cerberus should have been an M-rated game. But nonetheless, that's me defending my points of why I thought Dirge of Cerberus was actually a good game. So may the crystal be with you. You're welcome to disagree and debate me in the comments or another thing. I'll probably not read it, or I'll probably read it, who knows. But anyways, may the crystal be with you. Also working on Vincent Valentine web series, fan trailer at least. So please support JTS Productions if you want to see a Vincent Valentine, trailer. And then hopefully one day it becomes a web series. So there's that too.